This podcast is based on information sourced primarily from police and media reports, but certain names and other identifying details may have been changed or altered for privacy and security reasons. While the events and cases discussed are based on real investigations, some aspects may be simplified for time and for narrative purposes. Voice actors have been used to read from statements or documents. All information presented is intended solely to inform and raise awareness. Hosts may discuss theories regarding the cases examined in this podcast, but such discussions are not intended to and should not be considered by the listener to be legal conclusions. All persons discussed are considered innocent until proven guilty in a court of law. Listener discretion is advised.
This is Chief Anna Lally. Welcome to Somebody Knows Something, a podcast from the Elgin Police Department's Cold Case Unit. In this podcast, we will shed new light on cold cases in the city of Elgin by sharing untold details and by encouraging anyone with information to come forward. You will come along with real cold case detectives as they investigate active cold cases in real time and seek justice for the victims and closure for their families. We believe that the Elgin Police Department and our community can work together to bring closure to cold cases, because we know that, in these cases, somebody knows something.
Hello and welcome to Somebody Knows Something, the Elgin Police Department Cold Case Podcast. My name is Detective Andrew Houghton.
And I'm Detective Matt Vartanian.
Last episode, we chronicled our search of the Fox River, where we located and recovered both Karen's 1980 Toyota Celica and her remains. It was an unbelievable experience, and we're still processing the fact that we no longer have to search for Karen. We know where she is, and she's coming home to her family after nearly 42 years.
Our investigation led us to multiple bodies of water, including the Fox River. But as we have said in previous episodes, neither Andrew or myself have ever had any experience or expertise in sonar searches, diving, or recovering vehicles from water. So it is truly the expertise that Chaos Divers provided that has helped us to bring Karen home.
For this episode, we sat down with Jacob Grubbs and Lindsay Bussick from Chaos Divers, the Illinois-based sonar search and recovery team that helped us bring Karen home. Matt and I feel like over the last few months, coordinating with them, and certainly over the last few weeks, everything that's happened, we've really gotten to know them, and we really got to know Mike McFerrin as well, who was instrumental in confirming Karen's car with his dives and also helping us secure it and remove it.
Yeah, we wanted to use this episode to hear directly from Jacob and Lindsay about their experience with Karen's case. We also wanted to talk to them about their background and what comes next for Chaos Divers as they continue their mission to help other families bring loved ones home. So with that, let's welcome Jacob and Lindsay. Hi, guys. How are you?
Doing well. How are you?
Doing good. So we just want to thank you guys again for everything that you do. And we just want to give this, this time and take the opportunity to be able to just dig a little bit deeper into who you guys are and what you're about, what motivates you. So if you guys don't mind sharing, would you be able to give us both of your backgrounds and how did you, transition into Chaos Divers?
Well, my name is Jacob Grubbs. I was a coal miner for 12 years. With the declining of coal mining, I decided I wanted to pursue a interest in scuba diving and see if I could start recovering and helping clean out the river systems. From there, I found out that I was able to utilize our skills into what it is now on Chaos Divers. It is a search and recovery dive group, dive team that pretty much started with Team Waters out of St. Louis. Team Waters was able to show us the ways and show us how to use cutting edge technology with the Garmin and Humminbird the Humminbird sonars and Garmin LiveScope abilities to be able to see what's underwater, and we were able to utilize that and help bring home lost loved ones. So from there, I started pursuing that, and to date, now that we have brought home 20 lost loved ones since we've started.
Yeah. So Karen was your 20th human remains recovery. Is that right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. And Lindsay, how about you? What were you doing before Chaos Divers?
So prior to meeting Jacob, I was actually the executive director for a chamber of commerce down here locally. I was volunteering for a search and rescue ground searching team down here in Southern Illinois. And that's actually how I met Jacob was through that. We had a person missing who was missing along with his vehicle. One of his friends knew Jacob and got me in contact with him, said, hey, this guy can search water and stuff with sonar and diving. So I contacted Jacob that evening and we got everything situated. I remember one of the first questions that I asked Jacob was, how much are you going to charge us because we do this for free? And Jacob had said, we don't charge anything at all.
Sure.
And then he came out and helped with the search. And that's when I kind of started learning about utilizing YouTube and Facebook and social media in this aspect, because he had already had established Chaos Divers. And then from there, we stayed in contact, helped set up, his website, things like that. And then unfortunately, I lost my job due to COVID back in July of 2021, and looked at Jacob and said, I'm all yours if you want me to help you. And here we are 4 years later, and it's been an absolutely remarkable journey so far.
Awesome. So in the last 4 years, how many vehicles would you say that you guys have located or recovered?
Located, I would say, and this is just a rough estimate, and I would say about a little bit over 1,000 vehicles. And we were able to recover, what would you say? How many?
Probably around 200 or so. I know we've worked, I actually, in doing Karen's case, just pulled it up the other night and went through every case. We've worked 111 cases in the last 4 years.
Wow.
Okay. How many different states have you guys been to? Do you know?
We have been to 20-ish?
About 20 states, yeah.
Yeah, give or take.
Okay.
If you were to cut the United States in half, almost every bit of the East Coast or east from the half of the United States, except for the upper northern parts like Maryland and Maine and Vermont, we have not been up in that corner, but everything else, basically, we have had a search in those waters.
Okay. So you're probably talking like Ohio River, Mississippi River, Illinois River, lots of major waterways plus smaller rivers like the Fox River.
Yes, we've covered the Mississippi River, Missouri River. We've actually had several recoveries in the Ohio River, both vehicles and lost loved ones. There's a lot of, tributaries that go off of those rivers that we've been in. And then there's also been a lot of, little ponds and lakes, and we've pretty much been able to, no pun intended, kind of dip our toes into everything.
Yeah. I know we kind of touched base on this a little bit, but what specifically drove you guys to this line of work? Like what's the passion that drives you guys to do this type of work?
I think for me, it's been this, we've kind of been afforded this opportunity to provide answers to a family when they've not gotten them anywhere else.
Yeah.
So being able to do that for somebody, and I told Jacob after our very first recovery, it was in October of 2021, a gentleman in Ohio, in the Ohio River, I said, if this is all we ever do, if this is the only person we ever find, this is worth it.
Yeah.
So it's just being able to do something for someone. Basically, you just do the right thing because it's the right thing to do.
Yeah.
Jacob and I have been pretty fortunate in the sense that we've never had a missing loved one who was close to us. Since doing this job, my husband, however, his cousin has gone missing. He's been missing for a few years now. Jacob and I have actually gone down and kind of gotten out of our area of expertise in that, we searched the water focused on vehicles, where Sean is just missing from a small town in Mississippi. So kind of gotten out and, kind of pounded the pavement and just talked to everybody we can talk to anytime we're down in Mississippi. So to see someone close to us go through what these families go through, it definitely kind of drives our mission home a little more.
Yeah, I can only imagine. I know for us, we had talked a lot about the Fox River in the last couple weeks, but I know, Lindsay, when we first met and we're starting to coordinate this, we were planning to search way more area than just the river, right? Can you kind of walk us through that process?
Yeah, so I think there was kind of this mutual agreement between you guys and us before we had really even spoken too much that obviously the Fox River one needed to be searched. Just because of, the different routes. But we had, I want to say, approximately close to 30 locations that we wanted to search. We all knew you guys had shared your maps with us. And then that also entailed the different routes that Karen could have taken that night. We went even a step further in having the ability to go through and mark every single body of water, even ones that weren't necessarily on her route. In the event something happened, knowing that the river was flooded, did she, have to turn around and go a completely different way? We looked at everything. We all agreed that with the Fox River being the biggest body of water, that we wanted to search that first, take out that biggest chunk first. And we had even broken the Fox River up into different segments. As time got closer, okay, sure. We knew we wanted to search, from this street to this dam up to this street. And thankfully, I remember coming towards the end of the day and we had already kind of started to game plan for, what tomorrow was going to look like.
I think that's important to bring up here because, we've obviously had a lot of questions, throughout the last couple of weeks of why it took 42 years. Right. And, why we've said this before, but we can't speak for previous versions of law enforcement, only what we can, account for our actions and the 6 months roughly of what we've done with this case. But we knew we wanted to be as thorough as possible. And then once we met you guys and then you guys came up and we thought we had like 5 or 6 bodies of water, right, that we thought we were going to search. And then Lindsay, you're like, we have like 30.
Yeah.
And I was like, right there, I'm like, we have the right people because they care, right? And you guys, you're doing the right thing for the right reasons, right? Which is what Karen's family deserves and what Karen deserves also, so that was, to me, was a big sign of like, we found the people that we need, you guys are the experts in this and we got them. We know who we need.
Yeah. I think I want to just note, like for our listeners, we did identify a body of water on Santa's Village property, up at Illinois Route 72 and 25. We had met with that company and that pond had been drained in 2019. So we were kind of taking that off of our list. But just so people understand, we had looked at our 2 routes and multiple bodies of water along those routes. And then in conjunction with what you guys had told us, we were planning to kind of spread out from there over probably a 5 or 10 mile radius into all these other bodies of water. We had other sections of the river, both above and below other dams that we were going to look at just in the event that she went in and went over the dam. So it was not like we just came up and we're like, let's just search the Fox River in this one area and we're done. We had a full week planned of, like you said, maybe 25 to 30 bodies of water that we were looking at.
Yeah. And that was only on the east side of the river. We hadn't even talked about the west side at that point. We knew we wanted to kind of knock everything out because everything was on the east side of the river for Karen. PM Bentley's, her house, her boyfriend's house at the time, everything was taking us. And we had even talked about that going to, if we search every single one of these bodies of water and we still don't find her, then we even talked about planning a second trip up there with you guys and looking at the west side.
Yeah.
Jacob, can you just kind of walk us through? I know we got in the water around like 9 o'clock maybe that Monday. Just kind of walk us through, from your perspective, kind of how the day went and what we did, so our listeners understand.
So when we put in, like you said, it was around 9:30. High hopes that when we looked at these bodies of water, when we first started out, it's like we need, like you guys had already said, we need to knock out the biggest portion first. And that's going to give us more time to concentrate on these smaller bodies of water. I know the elongated body of water down Duncan Avenue was a very, very probable spot. Back then, it didn't have, a fence and stuff like that. But when I put in, I was very surprised when we put in the Slade Avenue boat ramp. When I put in the water, I was like, man, this actually has a little depth to it. That's good. Because I've seen a lot of rapids above I-90 driving over it. And I'm like, man, this looks shallow. I don't know if we're going to be able to get the boat all the way up. So when we first started out, I started going around while Lindsay was putting the boat in the trailer, or the trailer and the truck up. And it was just to kind of get an idea. I do know people say that there's been cars put in there from, I think it was Mike Goff who said something about a car that was actually put in there, but he didn't know if it was taken out. So I was looking for that, and just going around, I didn't see anything. So when we loaded up and took off for the day to search, just meticulously going through there, there's a lot of debris. There's some pipes in there. There's a lot of questionable items that are not vehicles, but they're like, what are they? So we spent a lot of time doing that. And just kind of investigating like we do, going every direction, making sure that they weren't vehicles. The first vehicle that we found, it was right up against that pump station. I could have sworn that was going to be Karen's vehicle. It looked small. It looked a little sportier. And then when Mike McFerrin actually pulled, I think he pulled a headlight out first. That headlight was sort of almost identical to the headlight that would be in Karen's car. So right there, I'm like, I got cold chills, and I'm like, oh man, like this is very potential. And you said the same thing. I was like, dude, you have to go back down. I was talking to Mike. I said, you have to go back down and give me something else. And then when he pulled the, I think it was a license plate holder up.
Yeah, and there was nothing attached to it. We're like, oh, okay, let's keep going here.
And then he ended up, I said, Mike, one more time, buddy. And he was a beast. And he came up with a plastic gas cap. And I'm not for sure if it was Matt or if it was Andrew who said the gas cap was actually square. So, and with a key lock.
Yeah, it had a lock for it.
So I'm like, it's not the car. We're done. Like, it's not the car. In this car, I don't think in my mind it will come out in one piece, because the way that Mike described it, we've had that a lot, to where the car is so deteriorated and so dilapidated that it will not come out in one piece. So to remove that would need a piece of big machinery to actually pull it out. And I just don't know if it would be able to.
Yeah, and I know Mike said that basically it wasn't intact. Like, there wasn't windows or door. Like, it wasn't like you're gonna just. It wasn't a car. Basically, it was the frame of a car with pieces attached to it. He kind of described, like, he grabbed that license plate, he said it just ripped right off the frame of the car.
Yeah, so those cars are, in my eyes, I feel like those cars are now a part of the fish habitat. They've done their damage. They've already done their damage to the environment. They just need to stay there. So the second car we were able to find, we actually turned back around, and I wanted to stay in that general area due to the depth. I said, let's just keep going around, because we did see some questionable things. And we found another vehicle, and it was the same way. But he was able to tell and determine that it was actually a super dark color. So I'm like, all right, well, let's continue to go. We traveled all the way up to almost East Dundee. I think we got to the turn. There was a one corner that I was really interested where the road actually ends.
Yeah.
Yep, Williams Place, I think.
Yes, Williams Place. So at Williams Place, I was like, I've got to get up there at least. So in a lot of our incidences or a lot of our missions, we have 2 foot and then it goes to 10 foot, 2 foot to 10 foot, and then sometimes even 20-foot holes. But in this case, that river is just solid 2 foot or even sometimes even a foot. So it's got a solid base on the ground with that current. So therefore, when we got to Williams Place, I said, we're turning around. It's too shallow.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we turned around and from there, I was literally done for the day. And traveling back, due to the fact that it was so shallow, it took us a little bit to go, but I was able to follow my track. So I pushed the gas a little bit because everybody was ready. It's been about 5 or 6 hours. Well, did you say 5 or 6 hours? More than that? It's been a long day on the river. Everybody was tired. So I was like, all right, let's get home. So as soon as I was getting ready to dock the boat so Lindsay can get the trailer down, I said, you know what? I want to check this one more time. We all decided we wanted to check it one more time. And I threw the sonar down and we seen a wall. We seen something that was different and it wasn't supposed to be there. And the fact that I couldn't see it, we went around and we were like, we don't know what this is. It took us 2 or 3 laps around this car. And finally, we decided that we were going to throw the magnet down. And I was literally getting up and I think it was Matt that said, that's a car.
Yeah.
I was like, at the same time, we're like, oh, wow, that's a car. And Matt seen it, Andrew, everybody was like, and at the time, Mike McFerrin, he had already gotten dressed and out of his dry suit. I felt so horrible, but I'm like, you want to give it the last hoorah on this? He's like, yep. So we can concentrate on other areas because believe it or not, if we didn't do that and find that car, we were done with the Fox River forever.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Because you had already determined that below that bridge had been already like drained to do all that foundation work.
Right. Yeah. Cleared out or drained, a number of years ago. And you're right. Like I distinctly remember that sonar image when we found it. And it's like one of those things that'll just stick in your mind, right? Like you just see it and you're like, that is a car. It's upside down. You can see the wheels on it. Like it's just clear as day, right? Like where, like you said, the previous 2 or 3 passes, you just couldn't see it, right? It's just that perfect, positioning over it at the right angle, whatever it is, to be able to see it. It's just incredible.
I just remember, Jacob, you pointing it out and going, that's a tire, that's the window, it's on its top, that's a car, that's 100% a car. And we said, okay. Yeah. And we circled back around and off we went.
So Michael got dressed again. God bless him. Love that guy to death. He does everything for us, and he won't wince an eye if I ask him to do something.
Yeah,
he's a very good diver.
Yeah.
So we were able to determine it was her car, and to see when he came up with that license plate, I was messing around with the trolling motor, and I was kind of not aware of the license plate at the time that he was holding. I knew he had a license plate, but I didn't see it. You guys seen it, and you were like, "That's it." I'm like, "What do you mean that's it?"
Yeah.
And then to see the joy that you guys had of we finally solved this case was absolutely beautiful.
Yeah, like having after 6 months of work on the case, you're holding something tangible in your hand that is a result of everything that just came together. And I'll say this once again, and I'll continue to say it. We would not have been able to find Karen's car without you guys. The credit goes to you guys, the expertise. I know you don't call yourselves professionals, but you are. You guys are amazing people, and we would not have been able to get that car out the way that we got it out with Karen without you guys. We would have lost stuff. It would have came out a different way. I'm still blown away by that. So I want to ask you guys, how has Karen's case impacted you guys?
I think so. Karen's case is the oldest case that we've had the honor of solving. So for us, because we do have another case in Iowa, Harry Milligan has been missing for 41 years. So it kind of gives me a renewed hope that, because there kind of comes this point in time where you're like, are we going to find this car? Is this car going to be buried under silt and sediment? And so some of these older cases, Tom Long in Ohio, he's been missing since the late 1960s. It's given me kind of a renewed hope that we can do this and we can find these cars that have been in there for 30, 40, 50, 60 years. So it's been really great to it's kind of refreshed us in a way. But I think also, one, getting to meet Karen's mom, Liz, was an absolute pleasure. I think that's something I'll never forget. But also getting to feel like we kind of got to be part of your foundation as well in this cold case unit. So to be able to experience this with you guys and this being your first one, and I will tell you that that feeling never goes away. Every case that we solve, it feels like it's the very first one we've ever solved.
That's awesome.
So, but to be able to do that with you guys and be there for your first one, and this really does encompass so many emotions on so many levels. Obviously bringing Karen home was an amazing feeling, but getting to sit down and speak with her mom and tell her, even after Karen is gone, look at everything that was done because of Karen. All of these people from all different walks of life have come together because of Karen. And again, to be able to do this, and with you guys and you guys having that faith in our abilities, it truly has been an incredible experience.
In my side of everything, I think with going what Lindsay said, to have everybody together as a team and to every single day talk about what we're going to do next, how we're going to do things, what the chain of command is going to be, and having Abby from the coroners with us and having all of that professionalism all in one has been a blessing. And to speak with the family again is truly amazing. To tell somebody from 90 years where her daughter has been for the past 42 years it's crazy feeling. So.
Okay. We just want to kind of wrap up with you guys by asking, how can our listeners get involved in what you are doing? How can they follow you? How can they donate? Different things like that.
So we are, our primary platforms for our searches are on YouTube and Facebook under Chaos Divers. We do this for two reasons. One, when we go on a search, it gets that person's story out to everyone. It brings them back to the forefront of people's minds. And that's the most important part of what we do. And then second, in being that kind of content creator role, it allows us to, make the money to be able to do this. We do this at no charge to the families and at no charge to law enforcement. We don't accept rewards if there is a reward from families. The best way is to follow us on either of those platforms, to interact with the videos, just watching the videos. That's the most that we can ask of anyone. The rest of our support does come through, donations and contributions. You can always contact us on chaosdivers.com. There's a link on there. And then we also have PayPal, Cash App, Venmo, things like that. And I believe if you are on our website and you scroll to the bottom, those links are on there as well. But the biggest thing that we can ask people is just follow along and support what we do and just watch the videos. And that's really the biggest thing that we ask of people.
Yeah. I mean, I think Matt and I both, we just can't say enough about you guys. I know you said it was a pleasure to work with us. It was likewise. It was just a pleasure working with both of you. We certainly hope that other people in law enforcement hear this, other people that have loved ones missing hear this, and that your service is something that they could potentially use. If anyone needs to get in contact with you guys, they can always contact us or contact you directly. We're happy to recommend you to anybody because we had just such a great experience with both of you and with Bike as well.
No, thank you for everything that you guys allowed us to do, and to be able to play this part in not only Karen's story but your journey as well, and that's something that we'll forever be grateful for.
Yeah, thank you very much, guys. We really do appreciate your time and everything that you've done for us here.
Well, thank you. I appreciate you guys.
All right, so Chaos Divers, like Matt and I said, have been instrumental in this case. We certainly appreciate them coming on with us for the podcast and for helping us with everything they did. Again, please consider donating to them, following them, liking their different content as they continue their quest to bring more people home like we were able to bring Karen home.
Next episode, our focus is going to shift back to Karen's case. We plan to discuss new details about Karen and her car, as well as some new tips that have been coming in as our recovery of Karen and her car has made national headlines. Now that we have found Karen and she has come home, and now that we have her vehicle, we can finally provide some answers about what we believe happened to her on April 16th of 1983.
If you or anyone you know has information about this case or any other cold case in Elgin, please contact the Elgin Police Department cold case email at coldcasetips@elginil.gov or the cold case tip line at 847-289-COLD. You can also review cold case information on the Elgin Police Department's Transparency Hub by going to elginil.gov and navigating to the Elgin Police Department's Transparency Hub, where every cold case homicide and missing persons case is listed with photographs and information about each case.
You've been listening to Somebody Knows Something here on WRMN. Detectives Houghton and Vartanian will be back with us after this. Welcome back to WRMN here in the heart of the Fox River Valley, broadcasting live from downtown Elgin. We're continuing the coverage and the episode 9 of Somebody Knows Something here with Detectives Andrew Houghton and Matt Vartanian. Thank you both for being here with us. Episode 9 already in the bag. Yep. Most podcasts don't make it this far, and you guys have done more than just make it to episode 10, arguably episode 11 and 12 that you've already got in the works. Yeah. But you were able to actually solve a case with the help of the Chaos Divers, to actually confirm what you had thought. Tell us a little bit about that experience, being out there on the water and looking in and going, what is this? We've hit things with magnets. We've had people go down there. What was that experience like?
Yeah, so that was March 24th when the first day that we were out. There was a feeling of being cautiously optimistic, I think would be a good way to put it. You didn't want to get your hopes up too much because the podcast was great because it did bring in a lot of new information that we didn't know about the case. There wasn't a single tip that led us directly to the river. So, the podcast has helped in both different ways, but it also helped to kind of layer that evening, like the last night that, she was known to be seen, about what the conditions were, what the night was like, things like that. So to be on the water, we wanted to kind of tame our expectations, I guess is a good way to put it. We always knew that we were going to search the bodies of water because we knew where she was that night, and we knew where she lived, So when you took those 2 points and you looked in between both of them and you saw there's several different bodies of water, on private property, obviously the river as well. We knew we were going to do it. It was just a matter of, coordinating with Chaos Divers to get them up here at the right time when the conditions were appropriate. But I think also we didn't want to disappoint the family. I mean, that's a big part of it, Yeah. So that was kind of in the back of our minds because, they were gracious enough to let us reopen this case, get the exposure with the public, get the case out there. And we just didn't want to let them down. That was one thing that was always in our minds.
When you first get into law enforcement, you kind of learn that no day's the same as the last. Whether you're driving a patrol beat or whatever. This was definitely exactly like that. I don't know that I ever thought I would be sitting on a boat, driving up and down, looking at sonar images, looking for a car, and throwing magnets over the side to see if different things are logs, or are they pipes, or are they vehicles. It was a very unique experience that you don't get to have very often. It'd been great if the weather would have cooperated a little bit better for us. I think the previous week was in the 70s or 80s for a couple of days, and when they came up and said, "Hey, we can do it this week in March," they contacted us, I think, in February, maybe a couple of weeks before that.
Yeah.
It would have been great to say, "Hey, can we wait till June when it's 80 degrees and nice out?" But obviously, we're not going to do that. As soon as they gave us a date that they said they could come because they had a free period of time, we said, "Yep, we'll take whatever you have." But it was just a great experience with them on the boat. I mean, I think we got to know them that much better. Just you're out there for 6, 7, 8 hours one day, 5, 6 hours the next day. Just the three of them, Mike McFerrin, Lindsay Bussick, and Jacob Grubbs, and then us, and then Gabby Allison from the coroner's office. So it was an interesting experience that I may not have in my career again, I would imagine, but.
It was a fast turnaround from the time that you had pinpointed the exact vehicle that you wanted to recover and the recovery. Yeah. Was there an option to do it that night, and then everybody said, "Look, there's a better option tomorrow"?
Yeah, I think initially, at least I'll speak for myself. I wanted to recover it that night, and then so I kind of got a little ahead of myself, because you get excited, your emotions get the best of you, and then you start to realize, all right, I'm getting a little bit of a tunnel vision, so let's slow down, let's think about it. I'm not an expert with the water. When we go back to thinking we knew we were going to search bodies of water. We had no idea what we were doing.
You're going in with a flashlight. You go in
do
with
we just drive a boat around? Do you think, hey, I mean, totally outside of my expertise. No,
we
idea
didn't know if they were going to put airbags underneath the car and float it to the top, and then just drag it, tow it with the boat, or if you're going to use a crane or whatever. So we had kind of pre-planned with them. Here's the context for a towing company. Here's the context for the fire department. We had multiple briefings, 3 or 4 different briefings with us, the fire department, Department of Natural Resources. We contacted every other law enforcement agency along the Fox River, going north of us here up through Carpentersville, East Dundee, West Dundee, all those agencies, state police, Kane County Forest Preserve, Kane County Sheriff's Office. So there was a lot that went into the logistics of the search. And then the day that we find the car, it's 4:44, I think, 4:42, something like that in the afternoon. Yeah, you're like, all right, let's get it out. But the diver, Mike McFerrin, had been in and out of the water all day.
Which the water was 40 degrees, right around 40. And that was another thing we didn't even realize is, once you did slow down and you started to, rationally think again about everything, without your emotion, you're like, well, it's going to get dark. What happens if we can't get the car out that night? What do we do in the middle of the night? Do we have to bring spotlights out? There's all these things that come into play where you're like, all right, the car's been there, so let's just take a pause.
Yeah, we don't need to rush this. Now that we know where it is, let's make sure we kind of regroup and do this the right way. We don't want to, let's get it out right now and tear the car apart, or do something that, doesn't make sense or is unsafe for the diver. I think Mike, it was probably unsafe for him to go back down and be under the water, because that next day, it was 4 hours of assessing the car, doing a lot of different stuff. I mean, he'd have been making multiple more dives over the next 4 to 5 hours. That puts us at 10 o'clock at night before we're even pulling the car out.
He would have spent more time in the water than at his hotel room.
And then do you worry about the lighting for getting the tow hooks on? Can we watch the car come out the right way? Or do we, if Mike went back in the water after the car came out to make sure we didn't miss anything, is he able to do that? So now you're talking 11, 12 o'clock. It just wasn't logistically going to work.
And they seemed like experts as well. Did they facilitate most of the coordination of the different units? Now, you guys talk regularly between each other anyway. Did they kind of take that lead in the communication and say, okay, this is where you come in with the system, this is where somebody else comes in? And then the handoffs that were there?
we very much relied on their expertise and their experience with being able to not only locate vehicles, but recover them out of there. Also knowing that there could potentially be human remains in the vehicle. So, as Andrew said, we had several briefings. I mean, there was a briefing every day that week. We relied heavily on their knowledge to understand. We said, these are the resources we have. If you need more, if you need something different, please let us know, because we're here to help you. And I mean, they are true professionals. I mean, I will say that all day long. because they have the experience, they have the knowledge, they have the understanding of how vehicles operate in a body of water, the conditions of different bodies of water, you know, the current that's there, what they need from a diving perspective, from a recovery. So once we had all the pieces in place, they were kind of running the show, like coordinating, like, this is what we need to do to hook the car up, you know. So they were coordinating with the fire department divers that were out there, with the tow company, with Redmond's Towing that was out there as well, and just making sure that everybody knew exactly what the plan was. Because from our perspective, like, the observation was, you didn't want to get ahead of yourself and like have something happen, right? You know, I go back to, they described the visibility in the river as less than 6 inches. And somebody said, basically put your hand in front of your face and it's like that close, or just close your eyes and you're like feeling like that's the visibility. Like that's just how the river is. It's not clear like some people would think. So we didn't want to have something go wrong and then you're scrambling to try to say, well, there's a bunch of stuff that just came out of the car. We don't know if it has remains or not. Now we're like, hey, we have to figure that out.
You have to be careful for the entire thing.
Yeah.
And take me from planning the body of water to planning the location to finding the car to then finding the remains. I mean, this took a larger scale. Like they had said in the podcast, they were talking about how they had mapped every single body of water. I mean, if it was a puddle larger than 2 feet, they had made sure they put a pin on it.
Yeah, so we had looked at obviously the different routes. We talked about, I think, in the 7th episode about the different routes we think she could have taken. We had identified obviously the Fox River. We called it Long Lake on Max McGraw's property. There was another drainage pond on 25, and there was the pond on Santa's Village property, which we learned through our investigation that was drained in about 2019. So we were kind of taking that off of our list. There were some other bodies of water we went and looked at to see if they were close enough to the roadway. I mean, there's some property on Max McGraw where once you get out there on Google Maps, it looks like it's next to the road, but it's actually like 30 feet above the roadway because it's like a levee and a man-made lake. So we're like, there's no way a car could get up into that body of water. But when you look at it from a map, you think, oh, that's right next to the roadway. So it was a lot of on the ground going out and meeting with different companies that own different properties, figuring out who owned different properties, things like that. We had anticipated doing just our main routes, and then we had talked about these other bodies of water, some strip mines and stuff like that, that were larger bodies of water. And when we talked with Chaos Divers, they said, that's great, we'll do those as well, but we want to make sure that we cast a huge net and just try all these spots. Because if they're up here and they have a week to do it, they would rather check 30 bodies of water, and we can literally have a map that we can say we've checked all these bodies of water, we can check all of those off. And they were talking about coming back up again if we found nothing and doing the west side of the river, because we had talked about when you go up 31 past like the Holiday Inn, there's a big body of water you kind of come across as you go into Dundee. What was that like back then? Did she have to turn around and cross the bridge for some reason to come back into Elgin? Would she have gone by different bodies of water there? Could she have gotten confused and gone north? There's some other bodies of water like to the north of there. We just had no clue. So it was kind of like, we want to search as many places as possible. We had to get maps, aerial photos, all these different things to confirm what was there, what wasn't there. So I know we've said it in a bunch of interviews that people are like, well, how hard is it just to search the water? And you go, well, you're looking at water from 42 years ago. And it takes a lot of extensive planning for that. I mean, the fire department was great. We were thinking about things like, if the divers need to charge their oxygen, where do we do that? If the divers need fuel for their equipment, where do we do that? If they need to repair something on the boat, how do we do that? Where do we put them in the water above the dam in Kimball Street? Can we put them below the dam in Kimball Street? Can we go up into north of 72? Where would we logistically put in for that? How do we get onto these properties? We had to get consent from different people to go onto their properties. So there's a whole bunch of things that come into play. You can't just show up one day and just drive around on the river.
Absolutely. You guys have had some great success with the podcast. You're already in the top 1.5% of all global podcasts right now. I think in total you're over 85,000. And you've alluded to, Detective Vartanian, that there was a lot of tips that came in because of this. Now, you said you were already going to look for the body of water, and this is the way you were going to go.
Yes.
But did any of those tips add context to why you were searching in that area, or maybe confirm that you were on the right path?
Yeah, so we did find out a lot about that night that we never knew about previously. So we know about Susanna, who worked at PM Bentley's. There was an individual that was leaving notes on her vehicle, moving her car, causing some issues there. We knew that there was a carnival in town also, right? So you look at some of those factors and you try to think about, okay, did we have a couple of these things that could have happened that night? In one of our episodes, we talk about, some serial killers that were active in the area. We wanted to also see, was Karen the type of person that would maybe stop along a road if somebody was in a disabled vehicle or a broken down car or something like that to offer help. So we went that route to try to just understand her mindset too, to see what she would have done. So along the way, we actually we reached out to some retired FBI profilers. They run a podcast called The Consult, and we wanted to get into her victimology. That was another thing, because to answer your question,
they came to us because they had seen that we were doing this podcast.
Yeah. Yeah. So there's, that was the exposure that it had. We wanted to go out there and see, if she was traveling home, did she stop somewhere? Did somebody do something to her and put her car in a body of water or something like that? I go back to when we first looked at this case, it was very glaringly obvious to us that we never had the car, we never had the body. Generally in these cases, you have one or the other that turn up at some point. And we had neither. And that was always a glaring question mark in our minds to say, why not? Why don't we have either of them?
We had a lot of people that either worked with her or lived in her neighborhood that heard the podcast and contacted us. People that gave us information about there was no fencing along this area where Max McGraw's pond was, kind of what that area looked like along Duncan in that time frame that we didn't know and that you can't tell just from looking at aerial photos. So it gave us more context of this is a route that she would probably take. We had people say, hey, we listened to the podcast. I lived on Level Street at that time. That is the route all of us would take to go up to East Dundee. We would never go out to 25. It was just much more convenient to shoot up Duncan Avenue. This is what it looked like at that time. So we had information like that. We had people contacting us about different things with carnivals. So we were looking into that aspect. We had a lot of different tips like that. And I think that because we did a podcast, local media and regional media and even national media were like, oh, this is kind of a unique thing that they're doing, which meant that we got invited to come on different shows or do interviews with newspaper articles. And then people saw those, even though they didn't see the podcast, and either came to the podcast and gave us tips, or were like, hey, we saw you talking on WGN, or we saw you in the Tribune, and then reaching out to us. So the podcast allowed us to bring in other media that I don't think we would have had if we'd have just said, hey, Elgin started a cold case unit, and we're looking at these cases. I don't know that media outlets would have contacted us to have us come and talk about that. But because it was a unique way to do it, we got more coverage that way, which drove more people to look at our cases for Karen and other cases on our transparency site. Because we've gotten tips on other cases as well since we've started this.
Do you think that having this exposure and reaching out to the community in this fashion, do you think that contributed to the expediency of this case?
Yeah, I think for us, we never wanted to, first of all, we never wanted to be exploitative to Karen or her family or any of the other cases that we have. But showing the public that we're willing to listen, right? First of all, like, we can't solve these cases on our own. I mean, there's a reason that these cases go cold, right? We need the public's help to do that. So it's that trust factor, right? We didn't want to just stand behind, a traditional law enforcement wall and say, we know everything, we don't want to listen to anybody else. We didn't want that. So we wanted to break down that barrier, and we wanted people to understand, that we need their help to be able to solve these cases. And we're inviting the public in to help us. We're inviting these groups that traditionally you don't work with in law enforcement, like chaos divers, for example, right? Like, they're not law enforcement, right? There's a lot of groups out there that maybe would say, we don't want them, right? Well, that's not the case. Like, people have to understand, like other law enforcement agencies, it's okay to kind of look outside the box for these types of investigative roles, or like the methods of how you try to solve cases, because that's how you get stuff done. I mean, right? It's the change of the media nowadays with different types of like social media.
Before we go, do you encourage anybody else to start one of these? Anybody else who's got a mystery, or anybody else who's having trouble finding outlets?
I think that thinking outside the box and using different mediums to put information out to the public is always beneficial. You have to step outside your comfort zone a little bit. Yeah. I mean, obviously, if you're doing a different type of case than Karen's, you'd have to hold back different information, but it never hurts to ask the public for help. Like, at some point, a case has been cold for 20, 30, 40 years. You have to put out some information. Absolutely. And giving people a little bit of information can jog memories, can give you new tips, can put you in new directions. And you need to try to embrace doing that.
Yeah.
Somebody knows something. The Elgin Police Department cold case. You can find that podcast on your favorite podcasting platform. Join over 80,000 other listeners who have joined in, both assisting in the case and learning more about the cold cases here in Elgin. Thank you, detectives. Really appreciate both of you being on here, and look forward to the next episode.
Yep,
Thank you
thanks
for
for
having
having us.
More WRMN programming coming soon with Out to Lunch with Matt McNeil. Stick around.